It was one of those days when everything seemed to go wrong. In TechSolutions' control room, alarms blared as engineers scrambled around, their faces pale with panic. Michael O'Connor, the CEO of TechSolutions, stood in the center, his arms crossed tightly against his chest. Sweat trickled down his forehead as he surveyed the chaos. 3 hours earlier, the company's entire infrastructure had collapsed. TechSolutions had just lost a major client contract, and the fault lay in the system's complete failure. The pressure was mounting, thousands of dollars in client business were on the line, and 20 of the brightest engineers were scrambling to resolve the issue. The system, which powered several client operations, was down. Nothing was working. Emails were unanswered, online transactions were halted, and their main product was completely inaccessible. The room buzzed with frustration, but none of the engineers could pinpoint the cause of the crash. They were deep into their codes, running diagnostics, resetting servers, and performing tests to no avail. Michael paced, muttering under his breath. He couldn't afford this disaster. Then, Jamal Thompson entered the room. He was a 25-year-old food delivery guy, coming in with a stack of bags for lunch, ordered through the app, naturally, for the tech team. He was casually dressed, wearing a plain black hoodie and jeans, his delivery bag slung across his shoulder. As he stepped inside, the chaos momentarily paused as the engineers glanced up at him. He gave them a polite smile and placed the food on the table, but the flashing red error codes on the screen caught his attention. "Is everything okay?" Jamal asked, his tone curious, not knowing the severity of the situation. Michael's eyes narrowed. "Can't you see we're busy here?" he snapped. "Unless you're here to fix our system, I suggest you leave. We've got engineers working around the clock on this." Jamal glanced at the screen. The error code was complicated, long strings of alphanumeric symbols, some of them even looked familiar. He hadn't seen such a system crash before, but as a delivery driver, he often dealt with technology glitches in the apps he worked for. He'd learned to recognize patterns over time. Glitches and bugs were part of his job, even if it was just delivering food. He couldn't resist. "Looks like your issue is a cache memory conflict," Jamal muttered. "You tried to reboot the main server without clearing the pending transaction buffer. That's why everything's crashing. You need to clear that before rebooting." A stunned silence fell across the room. Michael's jaw tightened, and the engineers exchanged confused glances. "What did you just say?" Michael asked, his voice low and disbelieving. Jamal repeated the same thing, his brown eyes still scanning the room, as calm as ever. "It's a cache conflict. You can fix it by clearing the transaction buffer." The room exploded in laughter. "Yeah, right, David," the senior engineer said with a smug grin. "This is a multi-million-dollar infrastructure problem. You think a food delivery guy is going to fix it?" "Let me guess," Michael sneered, walking closer to Jamal. "You've probably never even seen a line of code, let alone understand what's going on here. Go ahead. Go back to your deliveries. Leave the real work to the professionals." Jamal stood motionless, unfazed by the scorn. The other engineers chuckled, clearly amused. He could feel their condescending glances, their belief that someone like him, someone who didn't even wear a suit, could never understand the complexities of their work. But Jamal wasn't looking to prove anything. He had simply made an observation, one that was obvious to him. And it was hard to ignore the growing sense of satisfaction in his chest that told him, "I'm right." He turned back to Michael, his voice calm but firm. "Give me 2 minutes, and your system will be back online." Michael laughed, loud and exaggerated. 2 minutes? This system has been down for hours, and you think you can fix it in 2 minutes? I don't know whether to be insulted or impressed by your arrogance. "Just follow my suggestion," Jamal said, his voice unwavering. 2 minutes. That's all it will take. The engineers, some of whom had spent hours troubleshooting, now had to decide, follow the suggestion of a food delivery guy or continue wasting their time. Michael watched them, daring them to take Jamal's advice. His own pride wouldn't let him give in to the words of someone he deemed unqualified. But something in Jamal's confidence, and the unsettling calmness in his eyes, made the engineers pause. "Fine," Michael said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Let's see what you can do, delivery boy. You have 2 minutes to prove us all wrong." Jamal stepped forward, calmly directing the team to reboot the system in the proper sequence. He adjusted a few settings on the control panel, instructed the engineers to clear the buffer, and then pressed the restart button. Everyone held their breath. 2 minutes passed. The red error codes on the screen disappeared. The system powered up. The operations came back online. The engineers stared at the screen in disbelief. Jamal stood still, his expression unchanged. "How?" Michael stammered, his voice weak, a hint of admiration creeping into his tone. "You fixed it." Jamal simply smiled, a small, knowing smile. He grabbed his backpack and walked toward the door without another word. "Just doing my job," he said. The impact of Jamal's unexpected intervention still echoed throughout the corridors of TechSolutions. Though the system had returned to normal, Michael's frustration continued to simmer beneath the surface. He couldn't comprehend how a mere delivery guy, with no formal tech education, could have solved a problem that had baffled his team of top engineers for hours. As the days passed, Michael's irritation only grew. He sat at his desk, his mind churning with thoughts of revenge. Jamal had done something that should have been impossible, a challenge to his authority and intelligence. But Michael couldn't let it go. He needed to reaffirm his position, especially in front of his team. Meanwhile, in his office, David Park, the senior engineer, was still reeling from the incident. He had been one of the engineers who dismissed Jamal's suggestions as trivial. The more David thought about it, the more uncomfortable he felt. What if Jamal was right? What if they had missed something so obvious? The questions gnawed at him, but David was reluctant to voice his doubts, especially not to Michael. In a meeting later that afternoon, Michael was in full damage control mode. "I want everyone to focus on making sure this never happens again. We are going to go over every line of code. We will check every system from top to bottom," Michael announced to his team, his tone authoritative. But behind his words, a deep unease lingered. He couldn't let a delivery guy make a fool out of him, no matter how well Jamal had solved the problem. Still, the more Michael obsessed over the incident, the more questions arose. Why had Jamal been able to solve it so quickly? Michael had ignored the error Jamal had pointed out, cache memory conflict, and instead had insisted on brute forcing a solution. He had misjudged Jamal, and now it was starting to haunt him. A week had passed since the incident, and Jamal was still feeling the ripple effects of his brief interaction with TechSolutions. Although the system was up and running, Michael's vengeful streak had not ended. Jamal received a string of notifications from all 3 delivery apps he worked for. His accounts were suspended due to violating company policies. The accusations were vague, citing unprofessional behavior and unacceptable conduct, terms that could be easily exploited. Jamal was livid. The companies didn't even give him a chance to explain. They simply cut him off. It was clear now that Michael had used his corporate influence to blacklist Jamal from ever working with the company again. Sitting at his kitchen table, Jamal stared at the suspension emails in disbelief. His palms were sweating as he tried to process what had happened. Why would they do this? He wondered. Why would Michael go so far? His mother, Helen, walked in from the next room, still recovering from her recent chemotherapy sessions. She noticed the frown on Jamal's face. "Honey, what's wrong?" she asked softly, her voice weak but filled with concern. Jamal sighed deeply. "They suspended my accounts, Mom. They don't want me working for them anymore. Michael got me banned, I'm sure of it." Helen frowned, but she didn't speak. Instead, she placed a warm hand on his shoulder. "We've been through worse, Jamal. We'll get through this. You're strong. Don't let them win." That night, Jamal found himself unable to sleep. He stared at the ceiling, the injustice of it all churning inside him. His mind kept racing back to the moment in the control room, the mockery, the condescension, the disbelief that someone like him could even understand the complexity of the system. "I'll show them," he thought, clenching his fists. Jamal wasn't the type to give up easily. He had always fought for what he believed in, and this was no different. In the early hours of the morning, he fired up his old laptop, the same one he used to teach himself programming. His fingers hovered over the keys as he began coding again, this time for something much bigger than himself, a cybersecurity platform. His years of self-teaching, his need to survive, and his desire to prove his worth all fueled the fire inside him. He knew he could do it. And this time, it wasn't just about delivering lunch. It was about delivering justice. 6 months had passed, and TechSolutions had undergone a significant transformation, not the kind they had hoped for, but one that Jamal had orchestrated behind the scenes. The company's decline had been slow at first. Client contracts started trickling away. The engineers at TechSolutions, once so confident in their systems, were now questioning everything. They had been blindsided by Jamal's abilities, and Michael's actions had set in motion a series of events that TechSolutions couldn't control. At SecureOps, Jamal's cybersecurity consulting firm, business was booming. His platform, which had started as a simple security audit tool, had evolved into a full-fledged enterprise system capable of identifying and rectifying vulnerabilities in real time. SecureOps quickly became one of the most respected firms in the industry, known for its precision and efficiency. Clients lined up, eager to work with Jamal. Jamal had built SecureOps not out of a need for revenge, but out of a desire to prove that brilliance comes from determination, not pedigree. He had become a symbol of resilience in the tech world, a reminder that the most talented individuals don't always come from the most prestigious backgrounds. Meanwhile, Michael O'Connor was slowly realizing the enormity of his mistake. After Jamal's intervention, the contracts with several key clients began to slip away. At first, Michael thought it was just a coincidence, an unfortunate series of events. But soon, the pattern became clear. TechSolutions was losing clients at an alarming rate. And then came the bombshell. One of TechSolutions' largest clients, Megacorp, issued a public statement that sent shockwaves through the industry. They had conducted an independent security audit on their own systems and discovered critical vulnerabilities that had been ignored by TechSolutions engineers for months. Worse yet, they cited an audit report from Kay Williams, the name that Michael had been dreading to hear. The implications were disastrous. Kesha Williams, the delivery girl Michael had belittled months ago, was now an industry expert, someone whose expertise could no longer be ignored. Megacorp cancelled their contract with TechSolutions, and the media began to pick up on the story. Suddenly, Michael and his team were no longer seen as tech visionaries. They were the laughingstock of the industry. Then came the wave of other cancellations. In a span of 2 weeks, TechSolutions lost 40% of its remaining contracts. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. Michael's grip on the company's future was slipping. And the media was relentless, uncovering his role in sabotaging Jamal's career. Michael's worst fears had come true. Jamal had done more than fix a broken system. He had exposed a web of incompetence and systemic failures within TechSolutions. What Michael hadn't anticipated was that Jamal would use his knowledge not just to solve a problem but to change the entire tech industry. In a quiet meeting room at SecureOps, Jamal sat with Jennifer Chun, his trusted ally from TechSolutions. Jennifer had resigned from TechSolutions after Michael's humiliating behavior and had joined SecureOps as the company's director of operations. She had proven to be invaluable, helping Jamal manage the growing company and providing insights into the corporate world he had never experienced. "Jamal, I've been thinking," Jennifer said one evening, holding a stack of client proposals in her hands. "What we've done here, this isn't just about revenge. We've created something that's changing the way people think about security, diversity, and competence. I'm proud to be part of this." Jamal smiled, but it wasn't just a smile of satisfaction. It was a smile of someone who had found their purpose. "I never expected any of this to happen, Jen. But I knew I had to do something. When someone like Michael tries to bring you down, you don't back down. You show them just how wrong they are." Jamal was now sitting at the helm of a company that had far surpassed his original expectations. SecureOps had grown exponentially, employing over 50 talented individuals, many of whom had been rejected by traditional companies due to their background or lack of formal education. Jamal had created an environment where talent was valued above all else, and the company was thriving because of it. One day, as he sat in his office, Jennifer walked in with a grin on her face. "Guess what? We've just signed a deal with the biggest client we've ever had. They came to us specifically after seeing our work with TechSolutions." Jamal's heart swelled with pride. "I can't believe it. We've come so far, haven't we?" Jennifer nodded. "And guess what else? Michael O'Connor is in talks with a few of our competitors now. They don't want to touch him. Not after what happened." Jamal leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in thought. "That's the thing, Jen. You can't fake competence. You can't hide behind your title or your degrees. People are starting to realize that now. And so, as Jamal watched his company expand, he couldn't help but think about the journey that had brought him here, from a dismissed delivery guy to the CEO of one of the most respected cybersecurity firms in the country. He had proved that brilliance isn't defined by your background. It's defined by your ability to create, innovate, and overcome adversity. Michael's downfall had been a reminder that sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destruction, it's about building something so powerful that no one can ignore you.